2024 has already delivered some wonderful, soon-to-be classic albums. Well, do we have another one on our hands? Let's find out. Hi everyone, I'm Paul Crayson and you're watching Music Mentions. Today, I'm doing a deep dive review of the new MGMT album called Loss of Life. You know the drill. I'm going to discuss a little bit about the band and its members, some release notes, the track listing and song lengths, album title and cover, some general observations about the album, go through each track, and then I'm going to summarize my thoughts at the end with an overall album rating. So who is MGMT? Well, this is essentially a two-piece group that uses additional musicians when they play live and occasionally in the studio. They formed in 2002 in Connecticut, and their music has been categorized as psychedelic rock, psychedelic pop, synth pop, and indie rock. They use a lot of keyboard-based sounds in addition to standard rock instruments. They signed to Columbia and released their debut album, Oracular Spectacular, in the latter part of 2007. This album spawned three wonderful hit singles titled Time to Pretend, Kids, and Electric Feel that really put the band on the map. These songs were incredibly catchy. They subsequently released three albums over the next several years, but none had songs quite as catchy as the first few singles. And many of the early fans were kind of disappointed with the band and that they didn't deliver on their pop-friendly promise. Nevertheless, the band maintained a core following and built up an audience over the 2010s. Their last album, Little Dark Age, came out a little over 6 years ago in 2018. They left Columbia afterwards as they had fulfilled their contract. So who are the two MGMT guys? Andrew Van Wijngaarden. He's 41 years old and he's the lead vocalist, primary lyricist, guitarist, bassist. He also plays drums, harmonica, and keyboards. He had attended and received a degree in music from Wesleyan University, where he met Ben Goldwasser, and Ben is also 41. He also provides vocals as a co-lyricist and is credited with writing most of the music. He also plays bass, harmonica, and guitar. However, he is the band's primary keyboard player. The album includes some additional musicians as well. Let's take a look at the release notes. Loss of Life was released on February 23rd of 2024. It's management's fifth studio album. It was released on the indie label Mom and Pop and co-produced by Andrew and Ben along with Patrick Wimberly, who had also worked on their last album, Little Dark Age. A few other folks also helped with some of the production. The album was mixed by longtime collaborator David Friedman, who has mixed all of their albums. There were 4 singles that were released prior to the release of Loss of Life. Let's take a look at the track listing and the lengths. There are 10 songs on this album. Loss of Life Part 2 is the shortest song at 1 minute and 58 seconds. Nothing Changes is the longest at 6 minutes and 35 seconds. The total album length is just a little over 45 minutes long. Let's hop over to the album title and the cover. The album title is Loss of Life and comes from one of the song titles. It's quite an interesting name for an album. It certainly isn't a happy or a hopeful title. As a matter of fact, it almost comes off as defeatist and almost an exercise in self-sabotage. I mean, it's not really a great advertisement of a title, like, hey, check out our new album that has no life to it. It does, however, communicate to the listener that they're not likely to find music that is overly peppy and energetic and rocking, and to this end, I would say that the title is mostly spot on. Note that the title is not included on the album cover itself, almost like they didn't want to emphasize it too much. The album cover is fairly enigmatic and minimalistic. This is a work by a conceptual artist, John Baldessari, that the group licensed for the cover. 2 men are depicted as mostly figures in black, blending into the black background with just hands and faces in minimalistic cartoon-like colors. The centerpiece, however, is the photorealistic rocking horse, as one man sits on it with at least one hand on the horse's head, as if keeping the head steady forward and the other man holding the horse's lead. It's almost like they're attempting to tame it or stop it from rocking, but of course that's impossible. Is this a metaphor for something? Maybe the stopping of the horse is a metaphor for the stopping of life, or in this case, the loss of life? Could be. The main thing I take away from this cover is a feeling of bleakness or something melancholy, especially when considering the album's title. Now for some general album observations. The sound quality and production on this album are both excellent. The keyboard-based psychedelic sounds and flourishes that float around your head throughout the album, it often sounds like this wonderful 3D sound stage effect, particularly if you're listening through headphones. There are lots of musical layers to get lost in here. The overall vibe of the record is chilled out and intimate, but with soft pop elements thrown in there as well. It took several listens before I decided this record was like the classic spiritualized debut album called Laser Guided Melodies, but less intentionally psychedelic and with more traditional song structure and some more energy. Loss of Life is more grounded than Laser Guided Melodies, but it still frequently gives you that psychedelic floatiness feeling. This is not a party record. It's more the transition record you put on to signal the end of the party. By the way, supposedly the video game Elden Ring had some lyrical influence on this album, according to Andrew. Now let's take a look at the individual songs. Loss of Life Part 2 starts off the album. This first song is Part 2 of the last song of the album, if that makes sense. It's the shortest track at just under 2 minutes and is composed of a spare toy keyboard-like melody and some radio crackling sounds while a man with processed vocals reads lines from a poem. The man is actually an English professor and the father of one of the band's friends. Each line alternately moves around the soundstage in front of you. The poem is supposedly an old Welsh poem from the 6th century included in the Book of Taliesin, a famous Middle Welsh manuscript. This song is obviously meant to serve as an introduction to the album, and it works fine this way, but it would have been probably better as the album closer. Regardless, I suspect that they may have also intended this to be the closer, and when they were finally sequencing the track sequence, they thought they'd be contrarian and clever by moving it to the front of the record. Either way, the song works best during a full album listen and not as a standalone track. The second song is called Mother Nature. This was the first single. The great guitarist Nels Cline from Wilco plays some guitar on this one. The song starts with acoustic guitar and a penny whistle-like keyboard line. It builds over the course of the tune and it climaxes with some more traditional, like distorted guitars before softly fading out. Andrew's vocals are wonderful. They sound like a little bit of Fountains of Wayne in their more introspective moods. The melodies here are some of the strongest and memorable on the album. Let's peek at the lyrics from the second verse. Come take a walk with me down Billionaire's Row, trying to keep our balance over zero. We'll write the fairy tale for the rest of our lives, throwing the trash away one more time. The song appears to be the singer, Andrew, trying to convince someone, possibly Ben, to discard the past and to start afresh on a new path. He mentions writing a fairy tale for the rest of their lives and throwing the trash of the past away. This trash could be interpreted as those early pop singles that made them famous and that they've had a hard time getting away from. By the way, Billionaire's Row refers to an area of New York City around the south part of Central Park where there are these several skyscrapers that are basically ultra-luxury residences. Overall, this is one of the best tracks on the album. Song number 3 is called Dancing in Babylon, and this was the 4th single. MGMT welcomes a special guest, Christine and the Queens, on this one to duet with Andrew. This is actually the stage name of one person, Eloise Adelaide Letizier, a French singer and songwriter. This song would not be out of place on an adult contemporary playlist if it weren't for the occasional psychedelic touches that start the song and are interspersed throughout. I really dig some of the synth effects here. By the way, the band even stated that there's an adult contemporary flavor to some of this album. Like Mother Nature, this one also is a tune that kind of starts quietly and builds energy towards the end. Let's look at that second chorus. Don't rush me, don't rush me. I don't want to be thinking about this stuff. You hurt me and I run to you. Is that the big idea? You know we just started. We're proud-hearted like fish in the lobby, dead and gone, dancing in Babylon. MGMT lyrics are often inscrutable and hard to decipher, but I think it's safe to say this is a love song, but more of a song about hesitant love. It appears these two people just recently met, but someone already hurt the other person. But regardless, they're likely to continue exploring if they can survive together. Babylon here could be another reference to New York City. The melodies are pretty good here, but the real star is the melding of Andrew and Christine and the Queen's voices. They're really beautiful together. It's a solid song, even with its middle-of-the-road adult contemporary overtones. Song number 4 is called People in the Streets. This is a laid-back, floaty kind of tune that relies on some acoustic and chorusy guitars. There's a prominent bass, and there's some very basic drums. Once again, there's the familiar structure of a slow start and a build up to the end. The progression is very simple and the melody is not terribly strong. The highlight is more the production, where there are some great sounds and layers to this tune, especially towards the end. Here are the lyrics from the pre-chorus and a very short first chorus. Well, that's when the brain waves goodbye from the front of the train where the coal is burned, and you know the refrain without hearing a sound, so you sing it again 'cause you won't learn from the people in the streets. Yes, fairly cryptic lyrics, but from what I've been able to gather, it's a song about thinking you know something is right, but you're not quite sure. Just when you get a grip on understanding something is when things get unclear. The song could have been inspired by watching protests and literally the people in the streets, but they don't have the answer either. The song actually ends with what sounds like people chanting at a protest. This tune is worth listening to just for the production, but it's one of the weaker songs for me. Song number 5, Bubblegum Dog. This was the second single. The song starts off sounding like Kurt Cobain, then takes off into Bowie territory. The keyboards have a traditional MGMT sound to them, and the guitars are the fuzziest they get on Loss of Life. We also get a guitar solo that uses the whammy bar to bend the strings back and forth as fast as possible. This is probably the closest thing on the album that would not be out of place on Oracular Spectacular, and is the song with the most energy on this record. And yes, it's another one that builds that energy to the end. Here are lyrics from one of the choruses. The shame of vitriol aimed at the bubblegum dog. It's finally catching up with me, and I hate this bubblegum world. But hate is a very strong word, and it's finally catching up with me. So the first thing that comes to mind when you think of bubblegum is bubblegum pop. Music that is instantly catchy and poppy, but with little to nothing below its surface. The song could be about how Andrew hates bubblegum music. Maybe a reference to those famous early MGMT singles? Possibly. Except now it seems that Andrew is thinking maybe his hate has been too strong. Maybe it speaks to the continued struggle MGMT have between their most popular work and wanting to escape it. For me, this is one of the better songs on the album. I dig the arrangement and the more aggressive instrumentation. Song number 6 is Nothing to Declare. This song is the third single and starts the second half of the album. It's instantly a change of vibe from Bubblegum Dog with a very pretty chord progression and instrumentation. Andrew's heavily reverb vocal delivery is light and laid back, and there's a lot more air around the instruments. The song breathes much more than Bubblegum, which was pretty sonically dense. It reminds me a little bit of Nick Drake or some of the Shin's more prettier side. The melodies are strong here, and the song just seems to kind of float. Here's the second verse. Nothing to declare, not in the valise of my mind. All the documents are there, but still there's something to decide. The world's my fin declare, the waters beckon me to dive. I can tell the pearls in there, and still there's nothing I can find. Again, the lyrics are a bit oblique, but my interpretation is that this is a song about being unencumbered by hardened beliefs or cynicism in such a way that you can still think that the world is your oyster with pearls to search for. Fin de Claire is a type of oyster, by the way. This may be my favorite song on Loss of Life. The sound of it is wonderful, and the melodies are beautiful and memorable. There's even a mention of castles in the air, giving a nod to the fantastic Jimi Hendrix song. Song number 7 is called Nothing Changes. This is the longest song at just over 6.5 minutes, and it continues this laid-back, mellow vibe of Nothing to Declare, except that the vocals are much drier and they're pushed up front. The guitar is very shimmery, and there are these ethereal synth sounds that paint the background and the sonic scape. One of the highlights is this judicial use of some horns that bring a real majestic sound to the piece. It's another song that slowly builds up to the end. Let's look at the first chorus. And I feel strange, like I shouldn't be here. Let me know if you receive me. If I could change, then I wouldn't be here. Oh, nothing's gonna change, believe me. So don't lead me on. This is a pretty dark song lyrically, as Andrew wants to change in some way, but is resigned to the fact that he won't. It's ultimately a song of frustration, is how I interpret it. Although this tune runs for a long time, it doesn't feel like it. Again, we have another solid song on this album. Song number 8 is Frady's song. This song is the lullaby on the record. Frady is actually Andrew's 2-year-old daughter, and he said this track is for her. It's a love song to his daughter. Andrew sings the song almost in a whisper. The drums are very spare, and there are prominent chimes throughout. It's floaty, and it's dreamlike in its delivery. You can imagine Andrew singing this song to his daughter as he puts her to bed. The progression and melodies on this one are pretty simple, and it mostly works as a vibe piece, establishing a very chilled out, late evening kind of mood. It works better during a whole album listen rather than as an individual song you'll return to over and over again. It's not one of my favorites. Song number 9 is I Wish I Was Joking, and things pick up a notch here. There are a lot of psych elements, and Andrew's voice is processed through what sounds like a tremolo effect. The production is excellent. It continues this chilled out mood of the other songs from side 2. The choruses of I Wish I Was Joking, repeated several times, is really the highlight of this song for me. The melody is good and the lyrics are solid as well. Here are the lyrics from the first verse. Half of love is still love. You beg the dawn to ease you in. Pass the time 1,000 ways. In the dump, you'll find love. Half the time, I feel sad, and any kind of love will do. But it's a job. Don't know if that's the dream. In a style that's insincere. It appears there's a lot of struggle between positivity and negativity on this record, with the negativity edging out the positive aspects. These lyrics are a good example of this, with lines like half of love is still love and half the time I feel sad. By the way, the song ends on some laughter, but it comes off as sarcastic laughter, not happy laughter. This is another really good song on the album for me, and certainly one of the album's highlights. The last song is Loss of Life. This one sounds like an album closer, and considering the song title and mood of the track, it's appropriate. Instrumentation is very sparse, and there are really no drums to speak of. We get these heavy synth chords and this penny whistle sound again. Production is outstanding. This is one of the most cinematic sounding tunes on this entire record. I even detected some Beach Boys in the melody, and it even reminded me a little bit of the song The Game by Queen, but a slowed down version of The Game. Let's take a look at the last verse. When the world is born and life is ending, then you learn to love your loss of life. When the morning comes and life is over, anyone can love, anyone can love. Seems to me this is another song about something negative, and in this case, death, but Andrew is coming to terms with death just being a part of life. It's a circle of life song, and it's a fine conclusion to this album. Now let me summarize my thoughts on this release. This is what I'd call a more cerebral rather than a visceral record. It's one that can certainly be enjoyed in the background while you're doing other things, but it will reward your focused attention. I would particularly recommend some good headphones when giving this one a listen. Half the pleasure of this album is the production and all the sounds and the wonderful layers in it. Upon my first few listens, nothing really grabbed me by the collar, but after several more spins, it finally started to sink itself in. This is another album that you may need to live with for a bit before it starts to unveil its goodness. It's great for a late night listen on a rainy day with an adult beverage of choice and/or your favorite cannabis product if you indulge. This is one of MGMT's stronger releases, and it certainly comes off as more cohesive and mature sounding than some of the prior releases from them. I do think that some of the melodies could have been better, but overall, I really enjoyed Loss of Life. I'm giving this album a rating of 7 out of 10. Now, as usual, your mileage may vary. Let me know what you guys think about this long generating record. I mean, it's been 6 years since the last one, and you MGMT fans, I'd love to hear from you guys. Did this meet your expectations? Was this about what you were expecting, or have you dropped off the MGMT wagon? Let me know in the comments below. Let's have a little discussion. Anyway, thanks everybody. I appreciate it. You made it to the end of this video. I know it was another kind of long one, but that's the way I roll. I appreciate all you cats out there. Thank you for watching. Please give me a like, hit that subscribe and the notification bell. I'm going to catch you guys next time.